Thank you all for being here this morning. And I know you're all very busy and giving us a little bit of your time so we can talk about the very important processes of planning and optimizing the funds we have to provide the best transportation system that we can. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on the actual TTP 2040. I was here last year and talked about the adoption of the long-range transportation plan. Suffice to say, I left the MAP 21 goals here. They're now FAST-Act. Most of the documentation we send out now says formally MAP 21, but we leave this in our presentation because we were under MAP 21 when we adopted these goals and objectives for the statewide plan, and we did so in alignment with what the federal goals and objectives, or actually the federal performance measures that were being talked about at the time and that were going through the public involvement process. So I guess the key here is the statewide plan is actually federally mandated plan, and without that and without an approved STIP, we're not eligible to receive federal funds under 23 USC and 49 USC, highway type projects and transit respectively. So again, I guess as Tanya and Stacy talked about, it's very important for these plans and programs to be integrated, but it's also very important to understand that some are mandated at the state level and some are mandated at the federal level. And basically a lot of what we do back in statewide is mandated at the federal level. So anyway, we undertook this project to develop this long-range plan in late 2013. We worked pretty extensively with our stakeholders. We had 16 meetings, 8 stakeholder and 8 public meetings as we were going out to try to identify our goals and objectives. We did a lot of outreach to other stakeholders like Bike Texas, to a couple of agencies that handle rural paratransit, and various folks that just wanted to have some one-on-one time and talk about what their needs were. And then basically we took out these TTP goal areas as draft, and we went to all 25 districts. We visited all of the MPOs. We had over 66 public stakeholder meetings, and as well as open houses to talk to the public. We also went out with a tool that allowed the stakeholders to play TxDOT, for a few moments and go ahead and build a budget. And we tied this budget and this chip game to actual performance areas. And basically what they did was it was a pretty interesting exercise, because not only did we get a feel for what they thought TxDOT should be doing in terms of how we should be improving our system, but they also had a better understanding of the hard decisions that we have to make when you have more needs than you have money. So that's basically what drove what we call the balanced funding scenario in the TTP 2040. And just so you know, these were just regular Texans, college-age students, people that work for MPOs, the districts, just anybody who wanted to come in. So we feel like we got a fairly balanced sort of response to that. So anyway, we ended up with these goal areas, and again, they align with federal goal areas, safety being TxDOT's highest priority, asset management, mobility and reliability, multimodal connectivity, stewardship, and customer service. And then the most interesting goal of all, we were up in North Texas, and one of our TP&D said to us while we were at a meeting, you really can't do any of this without money. And so it's one of those things that we all have to deal with budgets and how we spend our money, but it's not something that we very often adopt into our plans and programs. And we found that is absolutely something that needed to be carried forward as a message, is that We already have more needs than we have money, but without some financial sustainability, without knowing the funds we're going to get over time, it's very likely that we'll set targets that we could possibly not achieve. So to that end, we included that in the plan. Again, this is a graphic out of the Texas Transportation Plan 2040. So we developed a long-range plan. We also, as a part of the development of long-range plan, we inventory the system. So we're able to capture lane miles we have, how many deep draft, shallow draft ports, how many miles of rail, and then to the extent that we can work with those that are responsible for those other modes, we try to get a sense of how they feel that's operating. That's very important because even if we don't fund those modes provide connectivity to the system. It should be just as important to us as the highways that we build, because highways do typically get you the last mile, but we have freight, we have other considerations that we take into account when evaluating system performance at the statewide level. So anyway, we did develop some priority needs based on the various systems data that we looked at, and that would be the Pavement Management Information System and the Bridge Management Information System, the CRIS, our crash monitoring system, and databases of the like. We looked at it, we worked with those, we had those divisions on our technical advisory committee, because as has been talked about, we can't, statewide plan is too important to develop in a vacuum without talking to the other divisions that provide the data, letting them understand how that data works in a statewide analysis, and to partner with them, anywhere and always when we can, to ensure that we do have consistency, especially throughout the I guess the technical groups that work on the data that's going to be used to determine what the right projects are for TxDOT to pursue. So basically, our approach was based on the national best practices. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to look at cross-asset allocation. We wanted to look at multiple objective decision analysis, because you can go based on pavement conditions and say, well, this pavement has a certain pavement score and we need to do this or that to get it up to a higher score. And you could do the same thing with bridge decking or your bridge rating, and you can say we need a specific project here or there. What we really have not had, I guess, the capability to do is look at these things at the same time on a project to determine which projects actually give us benefits in multiple investment areas. And as I stated last year, hoping that we'd get that ability, I'm here today to say gladly that we do have that ability now. So we're going to be taking data from the various systems, again, Rhino, BMIS, PMIS, DCIS, and we're going to be stacking that data in one relational database that provides us with the tools and the capability to analyze those projects across different variables in a matter of seconds. So again, we're trying to link planning and programming. We recognize as planners and probably engineers and everybody else here probably recognizes that what we're trying to do here is that, again, with many more needs than we have money, we have always, in my humble opinion, picked good projects. We have good engineers, we have good planners, we have good finance people, we have good support staff. But what we need to do to take our game to the next level is pick the best projects. We need to optimize the money we have, and anywhere we can pick projects that address multiple needs instead of one need. Not that those aren't important, but that's just a way for us to maximize that dollar. Again, the project prioritization or the analysis of projects is a data-driven process. We did develop a performance-based project prioritization framework. We did take this out to the public. We worked with Tempo, in particular the Tempo Performance Measure Subcommittee. So they are aware of, or have been aware as we've moved along, aware of the type of actions we were taking and what we were pursuing. And I think the other thing to mention here is that for the most part they've been very supportive, because much like TxDOT has to set targets at the federal level, so do the MPOs. So it just makes sense that we are both using similar data to analyze projects, and that we both have the same opportunity to look at our projects and compare them side by side, so that local needs can be taken into consideration, while at the same time statewide needs can be taken into consideration. And the tool we have will normalize the two if they aren't exactly the same. We did develop draft prioritization criteria weights, and rating scales to show a proof of concept. These again were vetted with the Tempo Performance Measure Subcommittee. They came directly from the balanced approach. In other words, they represent what the public and what our stakeholders told us. So those weren't developed in a vacuum. They actually have very long provenance all the way back to the development of the TTP 2040. Now, I'll go into a little more in a moment, but again, those criteria were based around what the MAP 21 Now FAST Act requirements are, what the HB 20 requirements are, and the prioritization of needs, the goals and objectives that were specific to the TTP 2040. And again, the incorporated data, I'm going a little bit out of order, but we had subject matter experts from all around the department, some MPO representation, and a consultant team help us to try to define these, at least for the proof of concept. So the implementation methodology, these are pretty busy graphics, but it really is fairly easy to understand. We want to calculate project impacts across all performance areas. So as you can see, this is a small table that represents what the input into our tool looks like. So we have bridge, pavement, safety, and mobility. Those are what they were called now. There will be slight changes based on HB 20, but they are still representative of this group of investment areas with the addition of economic impact. So this table just shows that you can take the cost of a project and you can look at safety, you can look at condition if this were to run out, you can look at bridge decking if it has a bridge, you can look at the return on investment. That's where that table would go. And so that's what the capabilities of this tool, that's the thing that it's going to provide TxDOT and its planning partners, is the ability to look at projects and, based on their various engineering components, compare them to our performance management systems to pick the projects that basically give us the most benefit and optimization across those investment areas. We're going to assign relative importance to performance metrics. So this is kind of an important step in the process, especially if you're an MPO or some other division or the districts too in the department that don't have a lot of contact with TPP as we develop these long-range plans or even develop the STIP, is that it basically uses an analytical hierarchy process where the decision makers can be in the room before the tool, before you even weight the criteria, and you can talk about what your priorities are and you can talk about what your values are, and it will do that paired comparison, and then you can all sit in the room or on a WebEx, and at least it'll start a discussion. What it will do is it'll optimize everyone's opinion on what is the most important metric or value, and it'll give you a mean average, and it will at least start the discussion as to how decision makers want to weight each one of these criteria. So we feel like that also is going to take us to the next level as we partner with our districts and our MPOs outside, because we can all be in on that discussion at the same time. When I say we, I'm talking the Queen Victoria and TxDOT we, not necessarily me. I'm not the decision maker, but I will show the decision makers how to use that part of the tool to come to those very important decisions about what the criteria should be, what the sub-criteria should be, and how you're going to weight each of those. So basically, we can compare dissimilar performance metrics on a level playing field. So basically, what that means is, although we're not using it yet on analyzing any projects other than highway projects, you can actually put transit projects in there. You can put general aviation projects in there. It will actually take the data on those projects, and you can compare them to each other. And so that's something that is really interesting. Currently, we have programs that are that typically fund certain of those projects, but it still is certainly worth the time to put those projects into the tool, even if you have a modal portfolio, so you can maximize the money that you have. Then we're going to score and prioritize projects. The interesting thing, and the first thing that kind of caught me off guard when we started working on this, was the score is 0 to 1. And I was like, wow. Basically, the reason it's 0 to 1 is because when you have 0 to 100, it encourages a lot more criteria and a lot more variables than really give you utility. And by that, what I mean is you can put so many variables and so many criteria in that they don't amount to much on their own, and you don't get a true sensitivity analysis. So that's something that, you know, in my career, that's a little new to me. We typically go 0 to 100. But same scale, you just have decimals. It's all good. But it encourages you to keep your criteria, you know, to your main criteria to between 1 and 6. And then when it also encourages you to know the difference between criteria and sub-criteria, because sub-criteria can be taken into consideration and weighted and rolled up into your criteria without taking too much of that very precious 1 point that you get. And so finally, what we're going to try to do is optimize project selection and evaluate trade-offs. I can't stress this enough. Having the ability to analyze projects is not going to take the place of the very valued subject matter experts that ultimately make the decision on which projects we build. No tool, well, I don't want to say that. I just saw a really cool 60 Minutes on AI. Any tool that I've got available to me does not work without human input and human manipulation. And this tool is very much a tool that is meant to be used by humans to just help make better decisions. It will not make your decisions for you. What it will do is it will look at your projects or analyze your projects, and it will allow you, you have an optimization feature where you say, all things considered, completely data-driven, without any subjectivity, without the things that we know that do go into project selection, this is how the tool would optimize this project list. And then you go, oh, that's not going to work because this project needs to go. So you take that and you basically move it to the top. It's called a forced entry. And so basically what it does is it takes your entire portfolio, recalculates that, and reschedules the project to take that very hot, very, I hate to say political, but I don't have a better word, and I got up too early this morning. Take that football, that political football, and let you bump it to the top. It doesn't tell you not to do it. It just tells you what you're going to give up to do it. And so I think sometimes, you know, I can only speak for myself, but I know for myself sometimes if I knew the consequences of some of the decisions I make, all the way back to my teenage years, I'd probably do something differently. So I would have loved to have had this tool back when I was about 15 on. My life would be much different today. So people just need to look at this as a way to engage in a data-driven process and make the best decisions that you can make given the constraints you have. So again, very much want to stress, in no way is this going to take the place of the ultimate decision by those very important decision makers. The other thing that we're happy, very pleased to be able to say is that this tool is going to be available to anyone who works with TxDOT on building our plans and programs, our planning partners. So MPOs will have access to this. They can build their own portfolios. We hope that the analytical hierarchy process helps them navigate some of those choppy waters with policy committees and things like that. So, and they can use as little or as much of the functionality as they want, but it's all optional. The only thing that we're requiring under the statewide plan is that if you choose to score your projects, at least under the federal performance measures, is that you provide us with the methodology and the data you use, because we have to take that into consideration as we take those individual rural portfolios and those MPO portfolios together, because we too have to build a score. So it has to be rolled up into a statewide score. And we're very conscientious in terms of knowing that we're all in this together, because these scores roll up to a statewide score. So if one or more of our partners is I guess, having some problems of whatever they may be letting, and there's a rate of progress, we want to be able to step in there and correct that course so that we can ultimately meet that horizon planning target, which is 4 years for TIPS and STIP. We will be, of course, we have to provide annual data, which we will. We're hoping to call that rate of progress, because what we understand is no one project affects the system. I hate to say that. For those of you who have to ever go and argue this one project's going to change the world, I'm with you. I feel you. You got to do it. But in an analysis system, one project does not impact the system. It's a portfolio of projects, and those projects being built when you say they're going to be built, and how they work together in an area or region or around the state, that gives us a kind of improvement in operation and maintenance. So for that reason, it's very important to stress that some things are, I can appreciate, we need to have some things that are scoreboarded. This process, the letting process, probably doesn't, it's more of a scorecard than a dashboard, because we're going to have to get some of these projects built to even be able to see an impact on the performance. And maybe you ask, well, how are we going to see that? Well, we hope to see that the next time we upload PMIS, BMIS, and Rhino, that after we've built a year of projects around the state, we're hoping to see the needle move. But one project, one letting, 1 month, even 2 projects, 2 lettings, you know, will not move that needle, because we smoke tested that. We know that that's the case. But the interesting thing is, again, it's going to start conversations, very needed conversations that will bring, I hope, bring us together as a planning community to set targets that we all are invested in and want to achieve. Sorry, I'm going to have some water. So the goals with the tool is Decision Lens, and the goals are to quantify and qualify progress towards attaining goals and objectives, provide agency, our agency stakeholders, elected officials, and the public with information that support our decisions. A lot of what I hear, and we all don't talk to the same stakeholders at the same time, is what I hear is, would you be able to show me the numbers on that project that support picking it? I could not say before. I could tell you how we picked it. I could tell you the data we used, but I could not say I could show you the numbers by variable, by weighted variable, what caused one project to be scored higher than another. We now have that capability. And again, that capability is available to anybody that wants to use it, any of our planning partners. That is what is kind of the, I don't know, again, lost for words. The neat thing about having this tool is that the agreement that was worked out provides this capability to say districts that may need something like this for their rural tips or the UTP, don't have the money to get an individual license. There are very large MPOs that could afford to get this tool, but the small MPOs can't. Some of those operations are just two-person operations. So they don't even have staff that can analyze the projects in the way that a tool can do for them. So that's also a very encouraging, again, completely optional. We want to allow for scenario analysis around efficiency. Okay, well, I did find a wrong word in there. That should be effectiveness and performance of projects. And we want to report, as Tanya said, we want to be able to report on scenarios and respective projects selected for any portfolio. The other, I guess, interesting thing about this tool is it'll slice and dice it any way you want. You can do it by county, you can do it by district, you can do it by metropolitan area, you can do it by project type. Is that okay. So we've pretty much gone over this, the agency goals and objectives, our measures. We want to incorporate changes in performance for proposed projects. That speaks a little bit to what Tanya and Stacy touched on. We understand that we're going to be thrown off our trajectory. That's just the reality of the planning process, and we need to be able to evaluate how far off that trajectory we've gone so that we can evaluate projects to get us back on track or take a look at our targets, because at least at the federal level, there could be some very serious consequences to missing targets for safety and bridge. And our goal is to work with all of our partners to ensure that never happens. Again, just decision science using multi-objection decision analysis, and we want to be able to look at the trade-offs. They're just telling you those are the databases we get our performance data from, and then talks about the 0 to 1 scale. So programming for performance-based selection, we're really looking at performance-based project selection versus operational. I'm not going to read every one of these. You'll have an opportunity to get this, but basically, I believe everybody in the room is familiar with the various plans and programs where we've listed this. We know where the department's going, and suffice to say, this is just a summation of how we plan to move towards performance-based planning and programming. These are the criteria and weights in the tool. That's just a screenshot. The criteria tree for the corridor, congestion reduction, safety, state of good repair, and economic factors. And again, the weights were selected on the balanced approach that came out of the extensive public involvement that we did. This is the scaling. So if you're using the analytical hierarchy process, this is the part of the tool that allows the decision makers to sit there and scale the criteria and sub-criteria in one setting and roll that up into a paired comparison that all the decision makers could look at so that they can discuss and come to agreement on what those criteria should be and how they should be weighted and scaled. This is the technical methodology for the scoring and prioritization. You can't see this well, but each one of those colors represents an investment area. So the other thing this tool can do is tell you what percentage of the money is spent on what engineering type based on the data that you provide. So it's going to enable us to talk back to the feds about how certain programs are being implemented. We have a hard time telling them, for example, how the CMAQ program works, because there's really very few CMAQ programs that are funded with 100% CMAQ funds. So how much credit do you take, for a project that's not funded that way? Well, we can take that category thing out of it and be able to give them performance based on the investment area, which is going to be quite handy and useful. Again, always going to be collecting and synthesizing data. We're only going to refresh the performance data once a year. That's what we already do. There's really no change or fear that will change, because again, that data is only collected, it's looked at once a year. So once a year, the data, the background data, I call it the metadata, is refreshed, the data that we're going to stack, and then after that point, you can put in new projects and then analyze them against that new performance data. It's going to be good for executive level analysis. It's what if we increase an investment here or there? Well, it's going to be able to tell you the percent improvement you're going to get for that investment area. What if we have to achieve a target? Like, that's the great thing, is that you can set it by target, you can set any dependency you want, and in a matter of seconds it will recalculate what that portfolio looks like and how the scores change on the projects and how they move up and down. Okay, so to wrap up, the next steps are the tool we have was configured for the proof of concept, but clearly we're doing some reconfiguring based on HB20. We're adding that, we did have an economic element to it, but that's not what it was called, so we're going in there and we're aligning those categories and investment areas with the current KPMs, the current strategic goals, and the way that they are described. We're going to be working again we're going to take a step back and work with our planning partners to go back over the criteria again. You also have the ability outside of the criteria that are set at the statewide level to add your own criteria. You just have to provide the data for it. So it'll absolutely take into account, say, local criteria that may not be something we have to report out on a national level. So anyway, did I make it? How far over am I? 2 minutes? I don't want to cut into Caroline's time. Any questions?
When will this tool be available for use?
Well, I made the mistake of saying last Wednesday, tomorrow, because it was, and that was, but I did say conceivably. It is available right now, but what we have to do is we have to work with the provider. Just like any tool, they want to do a minimal amount of training before they just turn everybody loose. So I'm trying to get the folks that teach, it's called Decision Lens University, to come and do one or two mass trainings for internal TxDOT folks that need to have immediate access, as well as MPOs. And then we will set up subsequent training, similar to what we do with the eStip. The customers that need it most, that need to use it now, would get first option to take it, and then we'll train as many people as want to use it. Soon. Promise.